History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography.
Yes, Dr. Clark.
It tells of people where they have been and what they have been,
yes,
where they are and what they are.
Yes.
Most important, history tells a people where they still must go and what they still must be.
Yes, sir.
The relationship of history to the people is the same as the relationship of a mother to her child.
Yes, sir.
To the Gilchrist Experience. Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I always love the Dr. Clark in the opening because we study history, and it's always so profound how he says the relationship of history is like a mother to her child. The relationship of the people to its history, and it's like a mother to her child. And you being a historian, we brought you on today to teach a favorite book of mine called the Kabbalion, it gives us 7 principles of Hermetic philosophy, which goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptians. And Hermes, which is known by the Greeks, the writer is written by 3 initiates. Initiates are teachers of the wisdom of the Kabbalion. And I thought Clemson, I read this 30, 40 years ago, and I gave it to Clemson so he could actually teach us what's in there. And I'm sure you're very familiar with all this, and it's like riding a bike again, coming to Hermetic philosophy. Welcome to the show, Clemson Brown.
Thank you, thank you.
Tell us about the Kabbalion, Clemson, before we go into the president and the rest of the stuff that's going on.
All right, let me just say that this is a good time, and in fact, it is the principles that we should, as a people, be studying.
Right.
It is ancient. Our ancestors understood the universe. They had a philosophy that explained how the universe operates. And so, let me just... the first is the principle of mentalism. Second, the principle of correspondence. The third, the principles of vibrations. The fourth, the principles of polarity. The fifth, the principles of rhythm. And the principles of cause and effect. And finally, the principles of gender. And the reason that I think we should really study them is because they give us a profound and deep understanding of how the universe operates. If you look at the universe, everything in the universe is perfect, actually. It has, it's organized, it has symmetry, it has beauty. It functions with all of the laws of that the Creator has embedded in the seed of all things. And because the world really needs the mind, the historical, ancient, ancestral mind that understood how the universe operated thousands of years, observing, the changes, the seasons, cause and effects, correspondence, understanding the oneness of the universe, the all in all. And because of the condition that we find ourselves in as a people and as a global family, if we are to survive, then we need to apply these principles to create a community and an environment that will enable us to find peace and harmony and joy. And we can find that. I mean, humanity can create that kind of environment if it understands how the universe operates. I just like to say that we are all on a journey, all of us.
Amen.
On an individual journey. We're born We come here learning. We come here trying to understand what we ourselves are all about. What is our destiny?
Our calling.
We're on an individual trip, first of all,
That's
to
right.
try to find ourselves and understand what is God, what is the universe. We, you know, how to survive. All of these things. That life is a learning experience. It's a learning experience.
Amen.
And it's being. But we're not only on an individual journey, we're on a collective journey with our people, you know, with our community, with our nation, cultures. That's a collective journey. So we're all on this individual journey, and then we're put together in this collective journey in which we have to create in our culture and in our community and our environment a space in which we can find this peace and this balance and this harmony, which is the same as the personal individual journey. So we need to understand how the universe operates. And I guess the big question that we ask ourselves is, what is God? What is the universe? I spent some time with Professor Gabriel Ebo.
Okay. Well, the whole thing being God is the all, which is
the all.
The first principle is that the entire universe is mental.
That is correct.
Right?
But let's kind of look at, you know, when we say God now, you know, God
well,
is
I was going to go to Professor Yibo, which you were leading into.
Yeah.
If the mind is all and the all is God, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that some people have a problem with the terminology God, because God, from a Western perspective, is a male deity. And that cannot be the all, because the all, as Professor
God's
Ebo,
a female.
yeah, as Professor Ebo explains, the universe, which is the all, he says, is an, I wrote it down because I want to make sure I got it.
Explain who Professor Ebo is, if people don't remember.
Thank you. Professor Ebo is the Nigerian mathematician, physicist, who discovered the equation for the unified field theorem. And this is critical for us at this point, because the unified field theorem enables us to model or to map creation. It unites both science and religion. And what, to I guess really to understand it, is that it is a mathematical equation that defines or that models the universe, how the universe operates. Or it can model truth. Time and space are the critical aspects that we are trying to understand, because the universe is, as I was about to tell you what Professor Ebo calls the universe.
Let me clear this up for the layman who don't possibly couldn't understand what we're talking about. This black man has proven the theory that Einstein was trying to prove.
Define, yeah. He completed the work of Einstein.
He completed the work of Einstein, this black man from Nigeria. So that's how the importance of this is. I want everybody to understand what Professor Yibo has explained and proven mathematically what Einstein couldn't do. All right? So
he went further.
He went further than Einstein.
Professor Einstein.
All right? And he's not recognized, of course, because he's black.
That is true.
Okay?
He took, I believe he took E equals MC squared, right, and compressed it and came up with the theorem?
No.
He went beyond E equals MC squared.
He went beyond that. What Professor Ebo was able to do, that if you take a point in space, in this infinite space, if you take that, the equation Gij comma J is valid anywhere in the universe.
Anywhere in the universe.
And to understand time and space, because it is about time and space.
Okay.
So if you took a point anywhere in the universe, this mathematical equation is valid. And the reason why I say if you took a point, because the universe is so infinite. You know, the Earth is like a speck of dust within the universe. And when we say infinite, that means we're talking about billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of universe. There is no beginning, there is no end. So one would say, well, how can you have an equation that is valid within that kind of infinite space? So what he is pointing out, that if you take, you know, in terms of time, if you take a point in that infinite universe, this equation would be valid. Gij, comma, j equals 0. Okay. It is like if you got a $10 bill, you start with $10. At that point, that, you know, you have energy. Some is going in, some is going around. But if you look at, you got $10 worth of that energy, and you got $10. You spend 5 on gas, 2 on some coffee, and 3 more on your sandwich, and you add it together and subtract it from the 10, it would be 0. Energy is not created and is not lost. Right. You know, so the universe is not expanding, and that's European philosophy with the Big Bang, that the universe is expanding. Professor Ebo blows that out of the water instantly in terms of you understanding. If you say that the Big Bang Theory, the expanding universe, what do you call the space in which the universe is expanding to? In other words, that space too. So there is, you know, you can't conceptualize an expanding universe because it's expanding into space itself. So, you know, we're talking about space. We're talking about the creator or creation is space and time. That is the way you can express it mathematically. So at this point,
how does it service us on this level here?
Oh, glad you asked that. Glad you asked that.
Now we lost a lot. We lost a lot of people with that one, because that's since the all is mine and everything is controlled by how you think and what you think about yourself. That's the reason for the Kabbalah, and that's the reason why we're talking about this. I'm coming down to the level of how you think and what you think about. This is how you control your life, and we're just trying to express what's controlled our lives and how we found our callings in life. And Graham's calling is obviously to bring out the betterment of himself and everything around him and make good of our lives, to be contributors to, you know, as service to others rather than service to self. This is our calling in life as black people. Until we all understand that, we get nowhere. We're still floundering around, fighting each other, killing each other. All right?
Yeah, you're correct.
All right.
If we look at, okay, we're talking about today. How does this affect us today? Well, it is through mathematics and understanding the mathematics that we're able to model every and anything is really a mathematical expression through principles and laws of mathematics, because the mathematics is the language of the universe.
Right. Okay. Right.
Everything in the universe is movement, is vibrations. That is, you know, one of the laws. So, geometrically, if you look at the pyramids that our ancestors built thousands of years ago,
10,000 BC. I'm told.
Yeah, 10,000 years.
Even further.
Right. They understood these laws of the universe. They talk about how the capstone went up. Maybe the capstone went up by vibrations. Maybe they were able, through rhythm and vibrations, because you can lift, you can move things.
Let's be real about this. The pyramids are built in the center of the landmass of the planet.
Good.
The only way this could be, and the way it was planted, it had to be formed from above. So let's talk about the Dogons and the whole thing about us coming from the planet Sirius, where Trismegistus came from, is from the Dogons, the Sirius mystery, where the beginnings of creation really came from. which people don't talk enough about. This is the black creation of the universe, going back to Yibo and everything else we've talked about here. The extraterrestrials do exist. In other words, these are our ancestors. This is where our ancestors come from.
No.
From the stars.
Well, is that that's not proven in...
From the Dogons.
Okay, Graham maybe can handle that. I can't.
I don't see that.
The Dogons?
There's-
You don't know
no, I'm
story
not
of
questioning
Dogon?
the
Well, I
Dogon.
know
I'm aware of
Dr.
the
Charles
Dogon.
Finch would do such a much better job of that. I've taped him, been around him, and so forth. But that is not something that I can
thought that was
discuss.
general knowledge.
No,
isn't
the Dogon is general knowledge.
Okay.
Extraterrestrials is another story in and of itself. The Dogon, you got to remember, ancient people, Europeans come up with this idea that extraterrestrials built the pyramids. Why? Because Nubians ain't bright enough to build a pyramid.
No, that's not.
That's ancient man had far more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding than anybody walking the earth today has. Far more. When they built the Aswan Dam 30 years ago or 25 years ago, they had to move the tombs of the pharaohs to an elevation 90 feet higher than where it was because that region was going to be flooded, along with the ancient libraries of the Egyptians. Now, with all the modern machinery we have, they could not lift one stone. With the cranes, with the hydraulic cranes that we have, they could not lift one stone. When I was at Ground Zero, they had a crane that was 30 stories high, attempting to pull a beam out of the ground. And they just about burned the engine out on that crane. Bovis was there. The tension was so great, it was shaking One World Financial Center. I was in One World Financial Center that night, and the building was shaking. They did not have a crane that could lift one stone from the tombs of the pharaohs. They had to cut the stones up and then move them, mark them, and reassemble the tombs of the pharaohs. This is modern day man. But ancient man was able to do things, just as it says when you read about the Dogon, they knew how to project their voice across vast areas of water. We know today that water carries sound 5 times louder than air does. And they could communicate across a broad lake and hear what was being said by projecting their voice at a proper angle into the water and comes out on the other side of the lake. There's even an account in I think Matthew, where a crowd of people came to see Jesus. He got in a boat and went out onto the water to address over 5,000 people. There was no public address system. There was nobody on a soundboard there tweaking it for Jesus. He spoke out on the water, and the people heard what he was saying. What the ancients knew. We have lost. My son was in Iraq. Sent me a photo of him standing at a clock, a water clock, that was built over 1,000 years before Jesus was born. That clock is accurate to the second today. Today.
Well,
and you buy a clock today, and it's not keeping time right.
Right.
Well, you're going to have to get used to the idea that extraterrestrials exist because they're coming soon. All right?
Let me just add this
To a bodega near you.
to the pyramid, and to say what sets the pyramids aside from any buildings that we may construct today. Not only is the pyramids built in the center of the earth, they are built true north. True north. And so precisely with the movement of the planets, that a star that only shines, I think it's every 24,000 years, every so many years, that star was shined through a portal into the king's chamber and light the king's face. Now that happens also at Ramesses, the same construction that you were talking about. That on his birthday, light from the sun,
the colonnade,
will pass through the portals and light up his face. Now That's how accurate they were with understanding the mathematics of the movement of planet Earth and the universe. They could align buildings. Now, you might have the World Trade Center down there, but this is form. And even though the engineering, we look at the engineering today and we say that's some great stuff in it, and it is, but it is nothing compared to what our ancestors did. When you look at the 90-degree angle, which is what the Masons say you're standing on the square, you can't build tall buildings without understanding
Pythagoras.
that 90-degree angle.
Right angle.
Of course, if you're not in perfect horizontal structure, the higher you go, the more your building is going to lean until it falls. But the ancients, and you can't look out into space and do a perfect horizontal and vertical line. You can't just look out and do that. So they had to come up with the mathematics for measuring a 90-degree angle so that anywhere you want to have a 90-degree angle, which is what you must have if you're going to build. Now, that's just one thing. If you look at the laws that govern all things, that is what the ancients studied in these temples and understand. Now, I said I couldn't speak about the Dogons because I've heard Dr. Charles Finch give in-depth understanding of the Dogons, and he can show you how they were able to model even birth, how they had all of that correctly in terms of how things divide and multiply, and they left all of that in their records. But I can say about the Dogons is that they were able to encapsulate much of this information and this understanding of how the universe operates, and they were able to carry that with them from Egypt into the areas that
they were descendants of the ancient Egyptians.
They were descendants.
The
all of this knowledge, what I'm trying to say is all of this knowledge is knowledge that our ancestors created, and we are now rediscovering this knowledge. And when our children begin to understand what we have given to the world and that we now have a purpose of bringing this knowledge out of ourselves and giving it to the world again in order for us to have peace, because Europeans can't possibly bring peace onto the earth. They don't know peace, and their culture and their societies that they create are barbaric. This one is barbaric. United States of America is, as Dr. King said, is the greatest purveyor of violence.
Let's go update ourselves and talk about our president, who's a black man, who's trying to bring peace to this planet. As we see, he was given the Nobel Peace Prize his first year. So maybe you can earn it with this Russian situation. We're in a tizzy right now. We're off the cabaña. We're going to updating ourselves. What happened last week at the convention, and President Obama came to New York, and Reverend Sharpton was the host.
Right.
And Clemson was at the convention with me, and we heard quite a bit. And we got to see the president.
Yes.
Now, here's a black man in a difficult situation, dealing with updating ourselves, and all this ancient history leads up to what are we doing today? With all this knowledge that we have of the Dogons and ancient history, how does that apply to us today with a black man in office and we can't even support our brother?
Glad you asked that question, because what needs to happen is that President Barack Obama needs to reach out to Professor Gabriel Ebo because of, his mathematics, just like Professor Einstein's understanding and his equation brought about the atomic bomb. Professor Ebo's understanding and equations will enable us. He gives us the mathematics for doing cold fusion. With cold fusion, you can create enough energy to run the city for weeks off of a glass of water.
But
that's renewable.
We're
talking about this kind of world in which we have to visualize we as a people, I mean the earth, because everybody around the world, humanity wants peace. You want to be able to send your children out and know that they're going to come home for dinner, that it's safe. You don't want your children raped and abused, and you don't want drones flying over and dropping bombs. So we want peace. We want environments in which we can find joy. These environments can be created. They can be created because humanity is trying to come together now with an understanding. We have through Professor Ebo, we have the mathematics for creating, well, let me put it this way. The West gives us an impression right now that God, the Creator, did not know what he was doing. So he done created more people than the earth can feed. So it's all right if we kill off a few billion of them because there are too many of them, and the fittest should survive. And all these other useless eaters need to be done away with because God didn't know what he was doing, or the Creator didn't know what he was doing, and he done created too many mouths. Now, that's the kind of philosophy that we are living under right now. Right. So it's just all right to kill. But that is not a reality. That is not looking at the universe from the perspective that the Creator knows what he is doing and is in control. Because as we said before, our universe would take in billions and billions and billions and billions of galaxies. There's infinity in every direction. Right. The equation that Professor Oibo gives us is valid anywhere in space, which means that we have the mathematics to model what we need as humanity to do away with war. Because if wars are primarily brought about because you got something I want, and I got the biggest army, so if you don't give up what I want you, I will hit you in the head and take it. I want to control you. I want the power. Philosophical, whatever way that I have to do that, so that I am reflected as God. I'm reflected as the most intelligent, and that's what Western history does. Western history is a lie, primary. It's built on a lie. It has the world starting with the Greeks, primarily. When the Greeks come about, the Africans had already done everything. Right. But everything is brought back to the Greeks. So that gives the impression to our children and to everybody, from a Western historical perspective, which is inadequate to understand just about anything outside of greed and just terrorism, that it's okay. The ends justify the means. But from an African worldview, the way Africans look at the way the world operates, and that's not leaving out anything. I don't, if you want to say that we need to build a bomb, well, the mathematics is about building the bomb as well, but that's not what we need for peace and harmony. But first, we need to model.
Come home.
All right. We need to model.
How does that apply to us today?
I'm telling you right now. Okay. I was telling you last night there was a bunch of brothers in front of my house at 2 o'clock in the morning, talking loud and using the N word and so forth. And I put on my shoes. I went out and sit on my porch. I did it a couple of times because it was about 7 or 8 of them. If them brothers knew that they had been called to lead the world, because it is our season. That again goes back to the Kabbalion. The Kabbalion talks about seasons. Right. There's a time and a season for all things.
And this is our time and our season.
This is our time.
And we have a leader. We have a black leader, and nobody's listening to what he's. Now you're saying he should reach out to Yibo. Yibo should have some presence of himself to know he's here for a purpose and reach out to Obama in some form of fashion. If he has all these theories and that can help us as a people, he should be sociable enough to come out of his ego. And Graham and I explained all this genius, and he has no social abilities. So how can we get this genius out of his cocoon? I mean, this is the problem, how we don't socialize. We live on our theoretical theories or our self-esteem and our egos, and we want to reach out, but we can't reach out because of our own personal ego. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about an ego.
All right.
And you and I, excuse me, and you and I personally know him as a human, but his genius is such genius, but he's not a socialite. He is not a socialized. And this is what happens to us as a people, how we can't reach out to each other. Now, Obama is sitting here as President of the United States, yet we don't support him. And if he has to be forced to do anything, we should help him do what he has to do. You see what Sharpton does? Sharpton's in a position where he can help.
Okay, then Sharpton can be the intermediate.
Right, exactly.
Between
so we have to
Professor
go to
Ebo
Sharpton.
And President Barack Obama.
But
My experience, by the way, with Professor Ebo is a little different. I haven't found him to be. I know that he is. Okay, look, I know he's always that he's generally late. I mean, he will keep you waiting, and this. I know his idiosyncrasies as well. But I also had the pleasure of traveling with him throughout Nigeria, in which he went there for peer review.
And I said before, how does that help us here?
Well,
his ego is fine over in his homeland. But how about your ego here when you're talking about us?
Let me put this.
I'm talking about home now.
Okay. First of all, it was necessary, this peer review. I'm so glad that I was there to film it.
Yeah.
Because you had mathematicians, physicists from all over the world who came to challenge him. And so when the dust settled, only Professor Ebo was standing, and the Nigerian Senate did something that it has not done since its creation, and that is it came together and they voted unanimously. I'm talking about when I said not done before, that is to have a unanimous agreement on anything. And they voted unanimously to create the Africa International Prize for Science and Technology and make Professor Ebo his maiden recipient. And that was one of the greatest things that I've had opportunity in all of my involvement with anything in having a part of, to make sure that the announcement that Professor Ebo had indeed formulated the equation for the unified field theory, and it was announced around the world, which saves that that creation for African people. It gives, because whoever announced that first is given the credit, and had the Nobel Prize given any other person that recognition, it would have been virtually impossible for Professor Ebo or anybody else to come behind them and claim that they were the creators of that equation. But you can't do that now, because China and all the all the African papers and everybody has already carried that, and because it was reviewed by the European Mathematical Society, the American Mathematical Society, Gottingen, which is one of the finest universities on the planet, has chosen Professor Ebo's work to celebrate Carl Friedrich Gauss, to show how much they appreciate and respect the work of Professor Ebo. So with me, I don't know the math. I looked at things from a spiritual perspective, and it was balanced from my spiritual understanding of how the universe operates, and from what I know about ancient African philosophical presentations of how the universe operates. I knew it fulfilled that concept, but in terms of the actual math, I wanted mathematicians who were trying to find the unified field theory equation for themselves to you know, to do the peer review on his work. And they're the ones who said, yes, it is correct. And I was able to document all of that on my trip. So getting back to what that does for us
I want to
here.
go to the president. Can we talk about the
Okay. What that does to us today is that it gives us the mathematics to create a new world. A world in which we can solve the need. I said need, the energy needs. Transporting. I mean, it just gives us
you know
an
what?
insight. We can
Can
model.
we do this? Can we do this? Can we get Professor Yibo to this theory that how is he going how can he reproduce? How can he change the energy policy of this country? Now, you said he had a theory of how to turn water into energy.
Yes, you can get enough energy from a glass of water
Right.
to run the city.
Give me this theory. Let's put it into something valid that we can. Next show we do, I want a presentation
Let me
that
say,
we
I know
can
where
give.
you're going. Let me say.
No, I just want to show the
Let me say.
president.
All
what
right, you
he's
can
done.
do this, but
All
let me
right?
say this before.
But I want you
before
to
you
come
do.
up with
this
something.
is important. This is important. Let me say this before you go. In order to do a lot of creative things, you need laboratories. You need. I mean.
I know all this.
You need
Let
money
me-
and so forth. That is why President Barack Obama and Professor Gabriel Ebo need to be working together with university systems.
Let's give a presentation. I want to present to you the President of the United States.
That he ain't going to put everything out because, look.
Well, how else do we?
Hold on.
You got to
Let
realize.
me understand. You don't need him once you have his mind. Now, his book is out there, but he wrote the book. He came up with the equation. But you don't have him, which is the way the Creator has brought so much through. Now, he will do the same thing for black people that Dr. Einstein did for Jewish people in terms of a partnership. We're looking for a partnership. Black people in this country need a partnership with this government because we're not even citizens here. We're not, and before we solve the problems of this country, and look, I say
Give me
this,
something to take.
before we solve the problems of this country, there has to be some pre-agreements that are worked out in terms of how we will share and benefit. And I don't mean on no surface level.
Dollars and cents.
On a power level.
Yeah.
So Professor Ebo is waiting on us, black folk, to bring him on. I mean, he's already there. He's done everything. So it is up for us. It is for our benefit now, for us to get together and move as a people. And yes, we need to hook up with President Barack Obama and Professor Ebo. He's waiting. He's willing. I'm his spokesperson at this point on this show to put that out there.
Give me a presentation that I can present to the president.
I just told you why that won't happen.
Well,
but he already been on your program,
No.
and he's been everywhere. I mean, for years we would go to anybody's home, anywhere you could gather few people, he would come.
Yeah.
But that time has gone now.
Clemson, I gave you the outlet, and yet, like I say, he's not very sociable. You know? So how can you deal with that? You going to speak for him? Okay. I just want to bring you what I videotaped at this is the latter part of it. We'll come back to this once again. I hate to cut up the show like this, but I just wanted you to hear a little bit from the president. And this runs item 2. We should have done this a half an hour ago, but we got into a extended conversation about Professor Ebo, who I think is well,
anti-what?
Anti-social.
Now you don't have any problem with his work.
Just but he's as a human being, he's not very nice. You know what I mean?
Very
the guy
sociable,
doesn't keep his appointment. He happened to stand me up for 3 hours, and he had Graham and I waiting to see him.
But that's why you. That's why you take
That's
this
why I'm talking about. I'm
position.
talking. You coming with a presentation. I mean, it's genius. But yeah, let's go to the president.
I
of the
mean, we only
United
drove
States,
40 miles
all
to
right?
see him.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Well,
this
let's
guy,
look at the
you
president.
raving about him. He's not very nice.
Just as inequality feeds on injustice, opportunity requires justice, and justice requires the right to vote. President Johnson, right after he signed the Civil Rights Act into law, told his advisors, some of whom were telling him, well, all right, just wait. You've done a big thing now. Let's let the dust settle. Don't stir folks up. He said, no, I can't wait. We've got to press forward and pass the Voting Rights Act. Johnson said, about this there can be and should be no argument. Every American citizen must have an equal right to vote. Voting is a time when we all have an equal say. Black or white, rich or poor, man or woman. Doesn't matter. In the eyes of the law and in the eyes of our democracy, we're all supposed to have that equal right to cast our ballot to help determine the direction of our society. The principle of one person, one vote is the single greatest tool we have to redress an unjust status quo. You would think there would not be an argument about this anymore. But the stark, simple truth is this. The right to vote is threatened today in a way that it has not been since the Voting Rights Act became law nearly 5 decades ago. Across the country, Republicans have led efforts to pass laws making it harder, not easier, for people to vote. In some places, women could be turned away from the polls just because they're registered under their maiden name, but their driver's license has their married name. Senior citizens who've been voting for decades may suddenly be told they can no longer vote until they can come up with the right ID. In other places, folks may learn that without a document like a passport or a birth certificate, they can't register. About 60% of Americans don't have a passport. Just because you don't have the money to travel abroad doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to vote here at home. And just to be clear, I know where my birth certificate is, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. I think it's still up on a website somewhere. You remember that? That was crazy. That was some crazy stuff. I haven't thought about that in a while. Now, I want to be clear. I am not against reasonable attempts to secure the ballot. We understand that there has to be rules in place. But I am against requiring an ID that millions of Americans don't have. That shouldn't suddenly prevent you from exercising your right to vote. The first words put to paper in our American story tell us that all of us are created equal. And we understand that it took a long time to make sure that those words meant something. But 50 years ago, we put laws in place because of enormous struggles to vindicate that idea, to make our democracy truly mean something. And that makes it wrong to pass laws that make it harder for any eligible citizen to vote, especially because every citizen doesn't just have the right to vote, they have a responsibility to vote. So, yes, we're right to be on guard against voter fraud. Voter fraud would impinge on our democracy as well. We don't want folks voting that shouldn't be voting. We all agree on that. Let's stipulate to that, as the lawyers say. But there's a reason why those who argue that harsh restrictions on voting are somehow necessary to fight voter fraud are having such a hard time proving any real widespread voter fraud. So I just want to give you some statistics. One recent study found only 10 cases of alleged in-person voter impersonation in 12 years. 10 cases. Another analysis found that out of 197 million votes cast for federal elections between 2002 and 2005, only 40 voters out of 197 million were indicted for fraud. Now, for those of you who are math majors, as a percentage, that is 0.00002%. That's not a lot. So let's be clear. The real voter fraud is people who try to deny our rights by making bogus arguments about voter fraud. And I have to say, there have been some of these officials who've been passing these laws have been more blunt. They said this is going to be good for the Republican Party. Some of them have not been shy about saying that they're doing this for partisan reasons. Now, it is wrong, President Johnson said, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country. It is wrong to change our election rules just because of politics. It is wrong to make citizens wait for 5, 6, 7 hours just to vote. It is wrong to make a senior citizen who no longer has a driver's license jump through hoops and have to pay money just to exercise the rights she has cherished for a lifetime. America did not stand up and did not march and did not sacrifice to gain the right to vote for themselves and for others, only to see it denied to their kids and their grandchildren. We've got to pay attention to this. Some of the folks from Chicago know, Crider knows, one of the first jobs I had out of law school was to lead a voter registration drive in my home state of Illinois. We registered more than 150,000 new voters. And as an organizer, I got to help other citizens exercise their most cherished and fundamental rights. That mattered to me. And as president, I'm not going to let attacks on these rights go unchallenged. We're not going to let voter suppression go unchallenged. So earlier this week, you heard from the Attorney General, and there's a reason the agency he runs is called the Department of Justice. They've taken on more than 100 voting rights cases since 2009. They've defended the rights of everybody from African Americans to Spanish speakers to soldiers serving overseas. Earlier this year, a bipartisan commission I appointed, chaired by my election lawyer and Mitt Romney's election lawyer, came up with a series of common sense reforms to modernize voter registration and to curb the potential for fraud in a smart way and ensure that no one has to wait for more than half an hour to cast a ballot. States and local election boards should take up those recommendations. And with the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer almost upon us, I urge members of Congress to honor those who gave their lives so that others could exercise their rights and update the Voting Rights Act. Go ahead and get that done. Do it because the right to vote is something cherished by every American. We should not be having an argument about this. There are a lot of things we can argue about. But the right to vote. I mean, what kind of political platform is that? I mean, why would you make that a part of your agenda, preventing people from voting? How can you defend that? There are a whole bunch of folks out there who don't vote for me, didn't vote for me, don't like what I do. The idea that I would prevent them from voting and exercising their franchise makes no sense. black or white, man or woman, urban, rural, rich, poor, Native American, disabled, gay, straight, Republican or Democrat. Voters who want to vote should be able to vote, period, full stop. Voting's not a Democratic issue, it's not a Republican issue, it's an issue of citizenship. It's what makes our democracy strong. But it's a fact. This recent effort to restrict the vote has not been led by both parties. It's been led by the Republican Party. And in fairness, it's not just Democrats who are concerned. You know, you had one Republican state legislator point out, and I'm quoting here, making it more difficult for people to vote is not a good sign for a party that wants to attract more people. That was that's a good insight. Right? I want a competitive Republican Party, just like a competitive Democratic Party. That's how our democracy is supposed to work, the competition of ideas. But I don't want folks changing the rules to try to restrict people's access to the ballot. And I think responsible people, regardless of your party affiliation, should agree with that. If your strategy depends on having fewer people show up to vote, that's not a sign of strength. That's a sign of weakness. And not only is it ultimately bad politics, I believe ultimately it harms the entire country. If voting is denied to the many, we risk ending up stuck year after year with special interest policies that benefit a fortunate few, and injustice perpetuates inequality. But remember, just as injustice perpetuates inequality, justice opens up opportunity. And as infuriating as efforts to roll back hard-earned rights can be, the trajectory of our history...
There you have. That's my footage. I actually shot that. It's just so important that we pay attention to, here's an accomplished black man who's the leader of the free world, and here we're being denied our vote.
You know, he talked about Johnson
Yeah.
back in '64. The key person to talk about is not Johnson. The key person to talk about was Adam Clayton Powell. It was Adam Clayton Powell that forced Johnson to sign that bill. It was Adam Clayton Powell. It wasn't something that Johnson was going to do. Adam Clayton Powell was the most powerful. No, it wasn't Martin either. Adam Clayton Powell was the most powerful man in the United States Congress. Wrote more legislation than anybody in the history of the country, past, present, or future. Adam Clayton Powell, and this is a story that Reverend Sharpton relayed, because he was with Adam Clayton Powell when Johnson called Adam's office. Adam said to his secretary, let the president wait, I'll get back to him. He called the president back, he said, Mr. President, you ready to sign the bill? Well, Adam, we ain't got nothing to talk about. But Adam, don't care what you need, Mr. President. You sign that bill, and you will get what you need on the back end. It was Adam Clayton Powell.
Okay.
He was the driving force behind Johnson signing that bill. It wasn't something Johnson wanted to do. He did it because he wanted something in return. And then he had enough common sense to push, not only sign the bill, but push for the changes right beyond the signing of the bill.
And next week we have Reverend Walron coming on. He's going to talk about Adam Clayton Powell's seat because he's running for Congress. Reverend Walron next week on this show, on the Gilchrist Experience. Gentlemen, it's been interesting. We've talked about a lot, but you got to see my favorite person, the President of the United States. There's my brother. I'm so proud of him. I mean, he's just, here's a black man that can teach you how to be black, as far as I'm concerned. And if you have any initiatives by Professor Yibo that can use water and convert it to energy, have him come up and act like he's sane and like a real brother and talk about it. Not act like a prima donna. This is what happens to our geniuses. They have all this knowledge and can't act like a normal person. And that's my personal experience with them. Now, Graham and I went and spent 2-3 hours waiting for him to show up. And that was very insulting. I mean, that's not a real brother with all that genius. And you expect him to socialize and spread all his genius to who?
Well, let me say this. As a soldier on the battlefield, I try to always keep my eyes on the battlefield and what needs to happen. You know, and you look out and you see that we have so many divisions. We have so much going for ourselves, but we can't spend our time fighting among each other. We need, there's some things we need to move on from.
But I'm talking about respecting one another.
No, I understand what
you can't disrespect a brother. That's exactly what I mean. You can't disrespect a brother. I don't care how smart you think you are.
Yes.
That's our problem. When you're disrespectful to any human,
6 years ago?
you get some flack. You get some flack.
Right. That happened many years.
But still, have him come on the show.
All right.
Have him come on the show with all his genius.
That's going to happen.
See if he can find some way to get here and explain himself and apologize for.
No, I'm trying to say what we have in our hand. That we have in our hand.
A genius.
I'm not just talking about Professor Ebo, but Professor Ebo is the most important vehicle that we have. But what we have as a people is really the leadership. Leadership is determined by intelligence. And I was saying before, Europeans through their history has presented themselves as the most intelligent people on the planet, and therefore they deserve leadership. They deserve to lead. And you cut your TV on and all day, all you see is white history in school.
But you see how they're presenting themselves right now. Let's update ourselves. You're showing your age. Look how they're acting today. And today's Congress, how they're back. What are they doing to this president we have today? I'm talking about the white folks that we're dealing with today. The Congress, as it's done, it's been the worst Congress in our history. They've blocked this great man that we have a black president in front of us. History will teach us that he was the best thing that ever happened to us, and he's as I'll say again, a blessing from God. As far as I'm concerned, and we have only 30 seconds to go.
I'm with you, 100%.
And thank you for coming. I've carried on enough. And Obama, my man.
Obama. Bam, bam.
Well, my man.
I'm not in disagreement
I really enjoyed
with you
myself
at all.
at the convention, and it was great to see Obama. And thank you for coming to the Gilchrist Experience. God bless. The God in me loves the God in you.
Amen.
God bless.
Boom, you're off.
Yeah.